actually met Michael through a relationship we both had with the same guy in business. So yeah, it's a little bit about me. I live in Denver, Colorado.
Beautiful. And so are you totally doxxed then? I mean, you gave your name and where you live. Don't see that too often in crypto.
I know. And it's actually something that I find very fascinating, because if we are supposed to be in this decentralized, trustworthy world, why are we all trying to hide ourselves? I saw it a lot in cannabis, actually. I saw people they were too afraid to say they were in the industry. They were afraid if somebody looked them up, their bank wouldn't give them an account, anything like that. So they'd use these pseudonyms. I even knew somebody who wore wigs. I was like,
Jeez.
This is so strange. And to me, it actually created a big disconnect and a big lack of trust. So as I've approached the Web3 world, I've always used my picture, my name. I'm not worried about people knowing who I am, because I do want to build trust.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I'm in the same boat. And I know that, I mean, Stephanie has Lady Obsidian on there, but she's lightly doxxed. But our core team here is doxxed as well. So it's always fun, I think, when we see projects come in with innovation and they're not afraid to slap their name on it. And with you guys, that's kind of literally with it being JennyCo. That's awesome.
Yeah, quite literally, yes.
And then, Michael, you didn't have a chance to introduce yourself.
That's fine. I'm Michael Nova, and I'm in San Diego. And
awesome.
My background, excuse me, my background is I'm a medical doctor, but I was an undergraduate in computer science. Then went through medical school and never really practiced after that. Just kind of had the same that Jenny does. I like putting companies together, fashion, all kind of based in healthcare. Took one of them public on NASDAQ a while back. And as Jenny mentioned, ended up Jenny, I guess, about 5 years ago. And I was running a genetic testing laboratory and company, talking about maybe there's some way to build some sort of genetic test that can dial in right cannabis products, based on your genetics, whether you're trying to get to sleep or, for anxiety or whatever. And we built a little product that was successful. And then Jenny mentioned, we started thinking about the whole kind of healthcare space and what is a really big problem. And part of it, came back to, well, there's huge amounts of data that are being generated on a daily basis. About a third of all the world's data is healthcare data. We, use that to personalize things, like we were personalizing this cannabis test, but we can personalize a lot of other things, with data. And the whole crux and process to get to JennyCo and where we are now.
That's fascinating. So the genetic stuff that you were working on with the cannabis specifically, you could take my genes, for example, and then tell me what types of products I would need, not just based on like my own perception of what I struggle with, but what my actual genetic makeup is.
So, basically anything that you input, whether it's food or cannabis or drugs or whatever, end up in one form or fashion and passes through your liver. And
right.
Small molecules like micronutrients, or in the case of cannabis, CBD or THC, it gets ground up in your liver just like anything else. And we know a lot about how the enzymes in your liver work. Enzymes are controlled and made, basically by genes that you have. And so you grind up CBD probably different than I do, just like you grind up caffeine different than I do. You can figure that out, looking at a saliva sample, from an individual, and looking at what are called the cytochromes and the cytochrome genes for multiple different compounds. We can do it for antidepressants, we can do it for standard other drugs. Personalization of drugs is a very hot topic in medicine, and has cannabis has the main ones, CBD, CBG, and THC, we can basically figure out maybe you're a slow metabolizer of CBD, but a fast metabolizer of THC, and you're trying to get to sleep, and maybe you should be on, oh, I don't know, Wolfie's Obsidian pot or whatever, compared to something else. And maybe you get a better reaction because Wolfie's Obsidian pot is probably better for people that are fast metabolizers, of CBD and are trying to sleep. So
okay,
putting all these points together. Yeah.
Does that tie in with, just interested, I mean, you being a doctor and working in this field, I know there's a lot of like studies coming out with, and we're a little off topic. We'll dive more into where you guys have pivoted to now, but I think the origin story is fun.
All day if you want.
Well, this is the first time we've ever talked about it at Obsidian. But I'm from Northern California, so that's a normal part of life where I come from. With these studies coming out, so you guys are did specifically develop data that allowed you to look at my genetic makeup and figure out what my body would specifically utilize well and what it wouldn't utilize well. Does that tie in at all, as you're talking about like the kidney and all of that? Does that tie in with any of the new studies coming out about essentially your gut health and how that's like your body's second brain? And because of that, every single person is going to receive medicine differently. Is that tying in? Is that in the same like realm of what you guys were working in?
Sorry, I don't know if Michael just what happened, but it kind of, yes. So like what we were really looking at were a lot of different attributes within the human body that process cannabis, and where those genes are, and then what they do for you in those aspects. So Michael would know more specifically if some of those SNPs that we were looking at were part of the gut health as well, but that whole gut health industry aspect is so interesting to me. And it is the root cause of so much of our health, our wellness, well-being, or dis-ease. So yeah, it was kind of in that realm. We really wanted to make it more comfortable for people because at that point in time, with medical cannabis, especially in this country, people could just go get a doctor to endorse them, but they wouldn't really tell them always like, here's the best way to go. And furthermore, the doctor actually doesn't really know. You can't look at somebody and eyeball what's going to be right for them. It all matters what's going on inside of the body. And so we wanted to relieve some of that pressure on people that if they really wanted to try cannabis to help with sleep or other aspects, pain, for example, that they would at least know a direction to go instead of feeling confused and going into a dispensary and just being kind of lost.
And so now you guys have evolved essentially from there. Your like laser focus originally was on cannabis, but then you realized, hey, we can take a step back into a more general view and look at how does each individual person receive anything. And so you're talking about cannabis. Now you're talking about medicine. You're talking about, you guys, let me back this up. You started here where we've been discussing on the cannabis research and what each individual human can utilize and what their body needs or doesn't need. And now you've taken a step back looking at data in general. Can we talk about where you guys have evolved to from where you started and where you're at now, just so everyone else can catch up to speed?
Yeah, absolutely. So where we really took an evolution was about 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago. We realized that as we were building out this model and we were starting to look at, well, how do we get this in the hands of big cannabis companies so they can at least get some idea of how to create better products for their customers and make their customers feel more confident in their decisions? It really led us to this path that we were thinking a lot about how humans have so much data and other people are profiting off of it absolutely every single day in every way possible. And we're unaware. And so we thought, well, what could we do to create some sort of exchange where people have their data, they can contribute it, and they earn rewards for that so that they're not cut out of it anymore.
Right.
And so that's really it.
Someone else selling my data, it's now me utilizing it to actually figure out what's good for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, what we do within JennyCo is everyone's individual data is used in two ways. One is that we use machine learning and AI to give them personal insights around their health and wellness and things that they could try. And then the other piece is we give opportunity, if they want to make their data available to the data buyers, people who are already doing this. And so in that way, they can earn rewards through that as well.
Interesting. So, I mean, it's essentially taking like how would you even say that? Like my personal data or my personal rights. And one, I can use it to improve my own life if I'm looking to find the answers for like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm struggling in this way. So let me utilize it to find an answer. But also like I can monetize my own personal data because these companies are buying it from all of the large corporations anyways. Now I can just bring it to the table on my own and I'm in charge of my data. And now I'm the one essentially profiting from that.
Absolutely. And the other thing that's really great on the buyer side is that as we own our data and we are updating it and we are keeping it really alive, that becomes the most valuable data set rather than something that's been decaying out there that's being resold by, 23andMe or your hospital group, whatever it may be. So
right.
To us, it becomes way more valuable than those aspects of data.
This is really fascinating. Go ahead, Pi.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, at what point did the blockchain or constellation specifically come into the picture for this?
What stage are we at in terms of
Or
development?
he was saying,
No.
at what point did you guys go from here's the health data, here's our idea, why bring it to the blockchain instead of the Web2 marketplace?
So last summer, so just over a year ago, we went through the Constellation Flight Accelerator program. And at that point, we had a pretty solid idea of our business model. But going through that program, we really saw, okay, to give people true authority over their data and ability to revoke it and not have things centralized, blockchain is necessary. And as we looked at the model and how global in scale it was, it also just made sense to use a token-based economy, essentially, since tokens get used within the ecosystem for a variety of reasons. So it was after we really saw that and really got it, we were like, oh, this doesn't work without that. I mean, we could try to make it work, but we would be vulnerable potentially or not really being able to give people full access to their own data and their ability to remove it. And then we'd be messing around with a lot of different fiats and bank accounts and things that just got kind of laborious to think about. So for us, it was an absolute no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. This is the kind of, how do I say it? This is the kind of project that I think the blockchain was designed for, or at least most benefits. I talk to projects all day long, and we definitely hear like really cool ideas. A lot are like economic tests, really, like what can we do with money? How far can we stretch it? What can we explore with finances? But to see something that is not so much Ponzi-nomics, but is really like you guys are doing something legitimate and bringing it to the blockchain. I think, and I love that your mindset, you said it at the very beginning, you said that in your mind, hey, if this is something that I want to be recognized as real and legitimate, I'm willing to put my name and my face on it because I think that elevates the space. I also think bringing legitimate projects and companies and ideas to the blockchain is what legitimizes the space. So, I mean, I do AMAs all the time, and what you guys are building is genuinely really interesting.
I love that. I also love the word Ponzi-nomics. I haven't heard that before, and now I'm going to use it all the time.
Welcome to the crazy place of DeFi, then. We use that a lot over here.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Michael.
That was very kind comments. I think, one thing that we hear all the time is that because, healthcare is so distributed and there's so many different types of data and there's issues with security and selling healthcare data on the black market and all this kind of stuff that blockchain, or I should say, big data in healthcare. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Big data in healthcare is almost a perfect use case for on the blockchain, and there's no better way to get this frictionless, component involved with the user interacting, directly not only with us but also with companies that are mining the data. And mining healthcare data is a giant business in the U.S. It's over a $50 billion business, and it's going to $80 to $100 billion by the year 2030. And a third of all data generated, a third on a daily basis is healthcare data, and it all means
Wow.
kind of something. And a lot of things mean healthcare data now. Do you live on a second floor apartments? Do you live in this city? Are you this ethnic group? Did you see the doctor last week? All that stuff means something in terms of us being able to take that information and mine it, give you much, much more granular recommendations about certain things. And as Jenny mentioned, the most valuable data in all of healthcare data is really valuable more than anything, but the most valuable part of that is the outcome data. Did the drug work? Did you lose weight on this food? Did your lipids go up, down, based on something you ate? Because when it comes down to it, about 60% of all healthcare outcomes are based on lifestyle. And about 30 to 40% are based on your genetics. So we're combining both those together and trying to give you these really granular recommendations about what to eat and what drug to take.
Right. And so that's like 70 to 90% positive outcome right there. If you can look at lifestyle and look at genetic makeup. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. As far as, so the next question, just for the anyone that's in like the DeFi space and sees essentially opportunity with what you guys are building. You're talking about monetizing data. You're talking about building essentially this blockchain health data marketplace, which you mentioned the blockchain is the perfect space for it because it's trustless, right? There is no middleman anymore. You're not selling your data to someone who's then selling it to someone else. You're essentially using blockchain as the middleman, which is it's genius. That's exactly what it's designed for. How does it work on like how does it work level as far as the two components of maybe I want to get involved and, like you said, monetize my own healthcare data. How would I actually practically do that? And B, if someone looks at JennyCo and is like, okay, like maybe you guys are doing something that has real potential to become something, how can they get involved with what JennyCo's doing?
Yeah, I'd be happy to take this, or Jenny, you can take it.
No, you go for it, Michael.
So, basically, we're building the system. We're building the blockchain part of it using the Constellation's technology, state channels, and also making it HIPAA compliant. There's a lot of rules and regulations in healthcare that we have to follow, in order for us to not get afoul of. One of them, CDPR. I mean, we know what all of them are, and that's all getting embedded into this blockchain that we're building, which would be the first of its kind, that anybody's ever done. So, along with that, we are building a mobile application, an app,
Okay.
That gives you all the capabilities of our system right on the mobile device, including getting linked in to whatever chain, whatever state channels and smart contracts, that they're on board with those NFTs, anything in crypto, any kind of part of the system that is basically yours, your ability, and for us, the app will also be able to collect healthcare data from many different places. You upload things, maybe you have a genetic test already. We'll be able to go get electronic healthcare records if you let us. There's all this consent involved. So the two big issues in healthcare for an individual user are basically, are you compliant? Is it HIPAA compliant? And consent involved, and the appropriate consent, involved about what you're going to do with the data and what the user is allowing you to do. So, I mean, as Jenny mentioned, we're really putting the user in charge of everything here. If they want to go into this particular, DAO around arthritis, this group, putting them in this group around arthritis and learn things about that, then they have the ability to do that. If they want to delete all their healthcare data immediately or not go into some certain, they have all that, ability to do that. So the app for us is kind of the focal point for being in the JennyCo system, and the entire monetization part also by the application.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Easy. And if someone wanted to, is there a way for people to, so that's like how you would get involved as far as essentially as a using my data or whatever. If someone just wanted to purely invest in JennyCo, is there any way to do that?
Yes. We're certainly on, we just finished the Lattice launch pad, and we're getting involved with other launch pads. And, we have people approach us all the time about, potentially, putting money into us, whether it's, large groups or small guys. We have a system in place for, we'd certainly be able to talk to those interested in doing that.
Okay. So right now it's more like seed investing. Or do you guys intend on, so for as far as the marketplace, do you intend on having like a JennyCo token or anything that is like a central economic piece of your ecosystem?
So right now we went through the launch, we're going on the launch pad. We've raised quite a bit of money, and the two big things that we have coming before the end of the year is we will launch at least a beta version of the app, the mobile, and then there'll be some sort of token release, a TGE or whatever you want to call it, probably towards the end of November, beginning parts of December.
Okay, so the roadmap's not like that far out. The token is this quarter essentially.
Everything kind of all the good stuff kind of happens this quarter, basically. The app.
And is that like, so as far as like the marketplace being up and accessible to the public, when is that planned?
I mean, what do you mean by that? I mean, the
like
overall the macro markets are.
Yeah, I mean, like today, if I wanted to utilize my health data, or like you were mentioning a second ago, like that arthritis group, at what point is in your mind is that ball like fully rolling?
Where we have everything baked out in the app is probably sometime in Q1. We'll launch the beta version, see how that goes. We have a number of different groups, that are interested in getting the app out and promulgating it, if you will. We'll get feedback, from that. We don't have everything baked in there, at this point. The state channel stuff is not going to be baked in there. That's not going to be ready to go until sometime in January. So I think we will have the entire system completely baked out, all bells and whistles, certainly in Q1 of 2023.
Easy. Q1. Awesome.
And
yeah, go ahead, Pi.
Do you guys have companies interested already in, acquiring customer data from you guys?
I can't really talk.
Oh, he was saying, do you have, like, at this point, do you guys have anyone, since we're talking about companies that want to essentially buy the healthcare data, you have investors or individuals that want to sell their data, but do you guys have anyone signed up yet to essentially be on the other end receiving that data?
Have many different groups that have approached us about this. We're under an NDA with a lot of them, and a lot of also outside the United States, and for a number of reasons. They would like our system in their basically their telecom networks, because they have a lot of trouble getting healthcare down to a lot of people that can't get quality healthcare at this point.
Cool.
We've had a lot of interest by different groups.
Awesome. Yeah, easy. I was going to say I could literally talk. I'm really intrigued by what you guys are doing. I could talk about it all day long, but I've been asking my own questions for half an hour, so I better give the audience a chance. I see there's our awesome team behind the scenes is collecting the questions and highlighting them and sorting them. I want to give a chance for you guys to answer those audience questions. Just, I'm sure there's better questions than me as one person can ask when I see there's 50 or so people asking more questions. I want to hand that over to Stephanie and Pi. You all good, Stephanie, to do the audience questions?
Can you all hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So hello there. Stephanie, Lady Obsidian here. And I'm just going to jump right in with some questions. The first one came from Ghost, and he was saying, can you explain how the JCOX will operate? How will companies get involved with purchasing the data?
So what we're building out is a portal that, do you want me to go, Michael?
No.
Okay. So we're building out a portal for the people who want to access the data. And this is really important because really what we're doing is allowing leasing of the data. We're not allowing people to come in and scrape it and keep it and just run off with it. So the way that we build that is really important, and how we help facilitate their access to that and the types of insights they can get from it is something that we will be we're building out right now. So yeah, they will have their own portal to access, basically with us as the overseeing overlords to make sure that technically speaking, they can't run off with anyone's information.
Perfect. Yeah, excellent. Pi, did you have one?
Yeah, all right. Yeah. So what would prevent like a company from just copying the data?
Well, that's absolutely what we're working on, and how they access it and how they get insights. This isn't a data dump where they can just come in and grab everything and then leave. And so technically speaking, it's going to be more of a session-based, most likely session-based sort of instance where we are facilitating what kind of data they can see and access and what kind of insights they get out of it. So it's not going to be about just like buying a big bunch of it, but rather what are the insights that are going to be driving their next decisions, whether it's product development or marketing, whatever it may be. So we're not going to make it possible, if that makes any sense, for them to just copy data and take it out of our system.
Yeah.
I have a question. I'm so sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, do you have a follow-up
You
to
can go
that?
ahead.
Because I wanted to follow up to that. Yeah, I just along that lines. Does each person then, how much control do they personally have? Like, will each, for each study or each time that someone's wanting that information, will the individual then authorize that, each individual instance that the information is going to go out? I believe that that's kind of the purpose, but I just want to make sure that is correct.
Yes. So yes. Go ahead, Michael. You got this one.
That's completely correct. And so, basically, a large company would come in and get kind of what we call I worked with IBM in the past, and they popped up, bits and pieces of this Watson thing. It's what they call instances. So a company could come in and get their own little, instance of the Watson technology and data that's in there, and be able to look through it and look around it. But they weren't able to pull anything necessarily out of that without getting permission. We're giving control, to the user to do whatever they want, basically, with their data, within the parameters of, what's on the state channels and how we, are able to protect the user.
Are they like alerted? So, like, do you say, hey, so and so wants to, look at your information because we like. Maybe it matches a condition they have or something, And so would there be like an alert or something? Like how would that control kind of come about, I guess?
Yeah, I mentioned before that maybe user is in a we have the ability to make many different DAOs, many different groups,
right, yes. Okay,
many different groups, and the users in, let's say, a group around arthritis, and they're trying to get information with each other around things that work in arthritis, and maybe there's an MD in there, there's a number of different people. And large pharma comes in and says, look, I want to do a clinical trial on X, Y, and Z, therapeutic or system or whatever, and I need people that have arthritis, in this ethnic group, living in this city, blah, blah. And so we would alert, obviously, users that have the characteristics that this group is interested in, and then have the users decide whether they want to get involved or not, or deal directly with the large company. A lot of these companies, what they want is really to sell more product. So if there's a way to get the users involved, helping them able to do that, they're all for direct user interactions if they can.
That helps clarify it a lot. And I do remember you saying about the DAO, but just looking at the audience questions and everything, that kind of helps to pull it all together. So thank you. And Pi, did you have a question? Yep.
Yeah, so I read your white paper a few weeks ago, and I understood relatively everything, but something that I couldn't grasp was how you guys revenue share. And, I think it was called data pools. I'm not sure if that's right. But sort of how does that work? Can I have JennyCo tokens and stake them without having any data, or do I have to have some of the data in the ecosystem to stake my JennyCo tokens and
Oh,
earn
yeah,
some
that's a
fees?
great question, and we would prefer you to have data in the system. But if you want to sign up for JennyCo, I mean, we would get some very basic information, about you, ethnic group, age, certain, do you smoke, do you drink, and then you would get compensated just for that particular information on a number of JCO tokens. If you want to state those and not give us any more information, about yourself, that's up to you. But depending on how many tokens that you have, and again, how much they're worth and everything else, will limit or not limit the amount of staking you're able to do. So we do have that option for people.
All right, but for example, let's say I'm a small fish, and I have like 5 JennyCo tokens, and I go into a pool with, say, like an arthritis study, and another person has 100 JennyCo tokens. Is the revenue distributed uh, in proportion to the tokens or just the data?
In proportion to the tokens. Everything's basically around the tokens. You get more tokens for giving us more data. Simple as that. And you get more
Right.
tokens anytime some large pharma comes in, or Google or whatever comes in and to mine some certain data from you. You're compensated with tokens.
All right, and how is the data encrypted for everyone? Do you guys use some like special standards, or
I didn't quite hear the last part of that.
how is the data encrypted? Is there like a special standard you guys use using Constellation or something, or
For
what is it?
encryption.
Constellation is layer 0, so it's basically a hardware layer. We're able to collect even sensor data, and we encrypt, using typical blockchain encryption mechanisms. And the storage of the data is not going to be on chain. It's going to be at least initially centralized storage someplace, whether it's on AWS or it has to be HIPAA compliant. So all of that has to be taken into consideration too.
Right.
And I'm going to jump in there with a question here. You guys can hear me? Yes? Oh,
Yes.
okay. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. So just kind of a question here from Logis 767, and he was asking about how you're going to connect the real world of the crypto and the non-crypto users, so that the non-crypto users understand the value of this element with your business. And I just think that's a great question because you really are bringing a very good real world use case, but also how do you kind of transmit that message to the healthcare system that really doesn't understand crypto and is very new to it. So I'm just kind of wondering how you guys are going about that and like marketing it and bringing in non-crypto users into the system.
A really good point.
That's a really, yeah.
So basically we're a public health company. It goes down to it. We're trying to give you information about yourself using technology to gather information around things that we think are important, concerning healthcare, and then helping you make recommendations about certain things that might be a benefit for you. It's really easy to understand.
Yep.
And then you layer on the top of that, and there's a monetization component, and the monetization component has to do with cryptography and tokens and whatever. At that level, that's fairly easy to understand too. Now getting grandma who lives in the middle of nowhere, right, to put her wallet address in and all this kind of stuff. That's not necessarily easy to do. It's not necessarily easy to do for people that are in the crypto industry and that understand it.
Absolutely.
It's definitely not easy for them to do. So we have to make that system very user friendly. Right?
Yeah.
Basically, in the app, you'll be able to open up the app and there'll be a number there, and that'll be how many tokens you have basically and today and how much that's worth. In very simple terms, And then if you need to go buy beer with some of the tokens, and very easy, like a lot of college students, that's the first thing that comes out of their mouth. Basically, wow, I can buy beer with my healthcare data. Yeah, if you look at it that way, and we have to make that fairly simple to do that. I mean, really simple to do that. That's how you get mass adoption. But
Yeah.
part of it, we're trying to personalize healthcare from a public health standpoint, really granular recommendations about what is better for you to do. That's a very easy sell.
I am really fascinated by that. Honestly, I mean, well, both aspects, but I agree with you. I mean, that is 100% the real world adoption piece that I think we are struggling so much to cross over. And so, does your app kind of help address some of that? Like can someone, like when they go to cash out their tokens, does it just deposit into their bank account, or do they get like a gift card? Like, how does that piece kind of work? And also getting their, I guess if they want to purchase the token, because that's, I think, the hardest part for, like, just how do you buy into crypto and how do you get your money back out into, your dollar or your fiat?
Yes.
Have you guys figured out that piece yet, or are you still working on
all
that?
Of it. Not all of it, but
okay.
we definitely have a framework in place
okay.
in what we need to do, and a lot of the information comes from very large companies that are interested in us getting our technology off the ground, and then helping with what you said, about making it easy, to get kind of mass adoption.
Yeah. It's really interesting because you guys are just really crossing a lot of barriers here, and two different. It's healthcare, the data, what you can do with that, and how that can really help people. But then also the mass adoption issue. I think it's a really interesting kind of marriage of the two that you guys are bringing. So, yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, and I think Martin asked a valid question. What is the average? How much can an average person profit from this? Like, if he downloads all of his data, or if he uploads all of his data to your website, how much can he expect in return?
I mean, I know when you look at high quality healthcare data, and that means something like an electronic healthcare record and a genetic test, that's kind of hooked together. There's been plenty of literature out there that says, that type of data per individual is worth, anywhere up to $5,000, let's say. I mean, I've seen studies where it's worth up to $30,000, but $5,000, and that would be based on, not just one time $5,000. That's your data is changing all the time, and we're adding more to it all the time. If you're linked into Apple Healthcare and you're linked into X, Y, and Z, the data grows and grows and grows. User in a lifetime, I think, generates upwards of 14 terabytes of healthcare data, which is a lot. So theoretically, depending on obviously the worth of things, the how much data you give us, how much the token is worth, how much more people are coming into the system, everything drives up the value of what basically is yours. So the more people that we get involved in the system, the value of your healthcare data goes up.
Right. Yeah, and follow up to that question. I remember having a conversation with someone about JennyCo, and they said a valid point that a main chunk of your data would come from people in third world countries who work jobs which pay them out like $10 a day, and they work bill to bill, and if they can just upload their data online and earn money, say, that would be a big thing for them. So how are you planning to just make that really easy for them?
Again, that is a core premise for us. We're all about public health, and if you basically want to get on our system, upload some data, and then not do anything else, maybe get some recommendations for us, you're going to have that ability to do that. So it's going to be very user friendly one way or another. Whether if you have a lot of data, want to really get involved, want to get in a group, want to get in the microDAO, want to be in the arthritis group, whatever, all that ability, or you can we've had countries outside the U.S. that aren't that aren't first world countries, but third world countries, basically really excited about what we're doing from a public health perspective. The individual, even though they don't have a lot of necessarily data about themselves, can get on our system and start to monetize basically something that they do have. You might poor, as they state in the white paper, you might be poor and out in the middle of nowhere, but you probably got a cell phone. Cell phone, most likely is a smartphone, and that gives us access. That gives you access to our system, from anywhere, and we can start, driving public health initiatives down, to you, no matter where you are.
Awesome. Yeah.
I have a question. Kind of going to tie in two questions that I saw. So one person, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name, asked, will the data be stored, like when you give it to someone, when someone agrees to be part of like an arthritis DAO, for instance, will the information be anonymous as it's handed over to the, to that study or to that group? And then along with that, Tesla Maxi had asked, will you have warnings on sharing genetic data and specific health data that could leave the patient to be discriminated in the future? Because, certain health conditions, of course, pre-existing conditions, like for health insurance, of course, the health insurance companies discriminate against that and raise your rates in some circumstances. And so kind of how is all that protected? Is it anonymous when they're giving over their data, or is it connected by name, or how does that anonymous piece then work?
Yeah, everything is de-identified. That's part of HIPAA, compliance. Every pathway along the way or feature that we bring into the system, all the data has to be de-identified, unless for some reason you don't want it to be. I'm not sure what that reason would be, but you have that option. Maybe you want to get involved with a clinical trial, that has a new drug, for arthritis, and you want to be you want to deal with the pharmaceutical company directly, then, that's up to you, to make that decision. To be fair on the insurance company stuff, and I have a lot of experience with insurance companies and trying to pry money out of them for the most part. But, they're all about data. So the more granular data that they can get, the more they can predict things, to happen and adjust rates and things like that. That's their, that's they put out new products. That's what they really do. But you haven't heard really, at least lately, a lot about, some insurance company, at least not a lot of it, some insurance company basically, canceling somebody's insurance because they have X, and that person has some really bad outcome, either dies or something else, because it's not a fruitful economic endeavor for the insurance company to do that. The simple reason is the insurance company makes more money nowadays if you're healthy. You pay into the system every month, healthy person, and you live until you're 90, 100 years old, and then get hit by a car, right? Never spend any time in the hospital, don't necessarily have type 2 diabetes, but you're paying into the system for 50 years. That's where they make the vast majority of their money. So it makes no sense for them economically, and that's because people are living longer. It makes no sense for them economically to screw around with canceling this and canceling that, based on some sort of information. And it's flat out illegal. You can't do that in the United States, especially if there's gene laws that say you can't take genetics. Just because a person has a predisposition for certain things, you can't not refuse. You can't refuse them health insurance. That doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true, and it does affect things like life insurance and stuff. But they're going to find that out anyways because they dig into that. So, I guess just specifically, I do wonder though. So, do you like on Tesla Maxi's question? They had asked, do you feel you need to have a warning about this then because just that you're giving sensitive information. But I guess they have a choice, I guess, in that then, correct? Like, and to have
you don't have to do it,
right.
Some health insurance company comes in and says they want to grind through some data to do X, and they offer that in place to people that are in a certain group. You don't have to do it.
Okay. So your warning kind of comes, I guess, in the fact it's not really a warning, but just your choice. I mean, it's the fact that you have the choice, and you just don't participate in that case if you're concerned about that. Correct? Oh.
Yeah,
sorry.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, you're correct. Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure. Sorry. That was all my questions on that. Pi, did you have another one to follow up?
Yeah, not a follow-up per se, but do you guys vet the authenticity of all the data in any way?
I didn't quite hear that, sir. Excuse me.
Do
Do
we
you,
vet the authenticity of the data? Like, how do we make
yeah.
sure that the data people are giving us is good data? It's their data.
Again, and certainly if we get an electronic healthcare record that comes from a large hospital group, that pretty much has a stamp of, approval on somebody. Getting personalized, daily information. Let's say we give them a couple of questions. Again, did you drink? Did you eat this? Whatever, on a daily basis. That's a little harder to verify if they're telling the truth or not. But in my experience and I've done this plenty of times before, and there's been studies that have shown that people don't tend to lie about healthcare data for reasons. That the information that they get back from either the provider or whatever system they're in, if they lie about it, it's not going to be valid, so it's not going to necessarily help them. Concern about that.
I did not know that. That's cool. Yeah.
So, but it's a good point. Data verification is certainly at the top of our list. In terms of security and privacy, whatever. And we're hard at work trying to put a system in place that does the best that we can on that.
Perfect. I've got one here from Arvin, kind of going back to the beginning when you all were talking just about your initial story, and Arvin was saying, I don't get the connection between the data and cannabis. Are you personalizing the usage, or are you controlling the data to sell? Because, we have that, you've kind of talked about how you can give access, but then you guys have also talked about how you can use that information to really help people. So just trying to clarify that point of, what do you do with that data exactly? Like, what's the purpose in it when you mentioned specifically about the cannabis piece?
So back when we were building out that genetic test, we weren't actually doing anything with the data at that point. We just wanted to get the consumer the data so that they could make better decisions for themselves. So
Okay.
that's kind of just where we started. But in that case, we were not at all looking to sell data or do anything like that. And then where that model evolved to was looking at the large companies that were in the space and being like, well, they could do this. They could white label our test so that they could then do a better job of coming up with products for their customers. But then that's really the stepping stone that took us to the next layer that said, no, actually, what if the consumer had the data and they could determine who had access? And within that, it's not just cannabis, which is just a very small subsect of all available information, but rather the larger holistic approach of healthcare information, and wellness, what people are doing on a regular basis.
Yeah, no, that's nice. Yeah, and I guess it's towards that wellness piece that I was kind of wondering. That was before you guys had really kind of developed the model. That was kind of the beginning of it then.
Absolutely, yeah, that was just the start, and it was the perfect start. It was a perfect way to start to look at personalization and the individual, and then just how important it was for us to put the individual in control of all of that.
Perfect. Yeah, I like it. Pi, did you have one ready or?
Yeah, slightly off topic, but considering that you guys have a background in the cannabis industry and you're part of the Constellation Network, do you guys have any partnerships with Greenheart CBD?
Not yet. No, we haven't partnered with them. We're really open to partnerships. It's a big core ethos for us, a big part of the way that we operate. There are people that do things better than us or have a way of bringing in users or information that is just better and different and bigger. So no, we haven't explored that yet, but we're happy to. It's definitely something that we would gladly go down the path of with them.
Nice. I have one kind of, we're just going to ping-ponging back and forth because the questions that they come in, they're kind of at this point not tying together, but all the ones that we haven't really hit yet. So a question from Random Ape. He has said that you mentioned, or she mentioned, earning from trying out a particular drug or product. This could be tricky, though, in terms of the legal consequences. And so how do you plan to safeguard yourself, and what kind of agreements would you have? And I did kind of wonder about that, like if they're doing the trials and things, because you've got this element with the crypto piece in there, but I assume that you have to follow HIPAA. But are there any extra safeguards that you guys have to kind of take and look into with that, since it is kind of a different element, a different way of approaching it than it's been traditionally done?
let's take pieces of that to start. So a pharma
Yeah,
company no worries. A pharma company comes in and says, I want this group of people and I want them to be in a clinical. So there's a whole system in place for on liability that the pharmaceutical company is basically responsible for if they want to take people and give them something, give them a drug and see if it works. So there is a huge liability. I mean, they're geniuses at putting paperwork in front of people, to prevent any kind of, backlash if something potentially goes bad, and the user understands that. Right. The way pharmaceutical trials usually go, there's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1, basically you give the drug and see if the user gets any bad reaction around it. And then if it happens, then you go to phase 2 to look at efficacy, and then phase 3 is even greater efficacy. And each one of those components has its own documentation and legal issues that have to be followed kind of to the letter. So from that perspective, that we're only setting up the user to say yes or no based on whether they do that trial or not. So the liability isn't necessarily with us.
That's what I wondered, right? And I think that's kind of what the question was getting at. So that, because it's kind of almost like, I can almost analogize it to like, us when we bring in AMAs, like we do our background work on it to make sure that, as best we can tell, it's a sound project, but ultimately it's up to the investor to make their individual, investment decisions. They should do their own research. And I guess it's kind of the same thing for you all. Like they approach you with a trial that they want to do. And you guys look at it and say it looks sound, and it's proved that they've gone through these different things, but it's ultimately on that pharmaceutical company and then the user between the legality pieces of that. Is that correct? And just following HIPAA compliance and everything, all the things that have already been set in place. You guys are just kind of the instrument to connect them. Is that correct?
Things besides HIPAA, there's CDPR and True Life, there's like 5 or 6 different new ones that have these bits and pieces of that whole security, data management, de-identification, all that stuff. And we, basically, if we want to be a complete system, we have to be compatible with just about all of that. So nobody can poke holes at us. I mean, we could certainly go out and launch this on a blockchain that isn't HIPAA compliant, but you know what? We'd probably get in trouble for that.
Right.
So we have to have HIPAA. We have to have, these other things. We're dealing in healthcare, in healthcare information, which is, for most people, it's a very sensitive thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I keep harping on that, asking about that, because it is such a sensitive area. And I think that, that you guys have taken the steps to kind of address those different security pieces. But I'm sure that's going to be one of the big questions you guys are always getting, because it is sensitive data. So thank you.
I had an interesting question from Karen P. Can this platform in the future also be used for animal health information, pets, farm animals, etc.?
Yeah, sure.
So funny you asked that. Yes, Michael and I have talked about that in the past. Like, okay, but when do we get to JennyCo pets? Because there is an aspect there too. Like now animals are getting their genetics tested, so people will be like, wow, my dog is part Pekingese and part wolf, or whatever it may be. But within that too, animals exhibit different traits and different issues, whether it's a German Shepherd that has hip dysplasia or, whatever comes up. One of my Chihuahuas is fully blind, and it's just more of a thing that happens. So eventually, yes, we've talked about it from the livestock perspective, and people being able to really drill down onto the genetics of livestock and the viability, health of them, whatever that may be, and our pets as well. So we'd love to get into the animal world with this too.
And as you know, most of the anti-aging community is very focused on using pets and animals, whether to start with worms and flies and whatever up to dogs, because when it comes down to it, there's a lot of homogeneous genetics that are that show up even in lower life forms that actually are applicable to human genetics. The same systems are in place depending on how far up the complexity food chain you go. And so there is a lot of interest in healthcare. And as you know, people spend a lot of money on their pets, and they spend a lot of money on healthcare for their pets. And, we're really interested in that. That could easily be a DAO for us, the pet DAO is certainly interesting.
Yeah, I like
everyone
that a
loves
lot.
pet.
I think that's very interesting. Do you have any follow-up comments on that, Pi? I like that, though.
No, I can totally
okay.
see
Okay.
genetically testing my dog.
Speaking of the DAOs, I did see a question in here, and I can't seem to find it now. But someone was asking about, of course, you have the DAOs that people can take their data into. But with the token piece, is there also going to be like a DAO that has any say over kind of any of the tokenomics aspects of that token or not?
Again, can we discuss the token economics? Is that what you were interested in?
Well, yeah, because the tokenomics, I guess, just because like talking about DAOs, like so traditionally, like in crypto, you think of DAOs as the owners of a token have a vote and a say in what happens with their investment, and maybe you guys are going to partner with a certain something or something, and the DAO owners, the token owners, would have a say in that. Is there any plans for that type of a DAO, or is it just purely like the DAOs, meaning that the things that people can, like the arthritis group or the the healthcare group DAOs? I guess, if that makes sense, like separate
Right.
from the healthcare ones. Is there something specifically related just to the token alone, separate from all that?
The whole company is set up as a DAO. Just there's the
Okay.
overarching DAO,
Okay.
and the tokens are used for governance. The tokens are potentially used to buy services on our platform, whether let's say it's a telehealth service or you want a laboratory test or whatever. And then there's the micro DAOs, the arthritis DAO or whatever, pet DAO, and they will have their own, JennyCo, tokens involved with that, with different governing, issues and whatever that they want to set up with.
Gotcha.
So there's a lot of utility in the token. The token, gets moved around and you can buy things with it. You can, do governance with it. You can get involved with groups, there are certain groups, using the tokens, and the large companies that come in, they'll probably end up paying us initially in fiat until they get used, to the crypto side, but we'll convert some of that fiat into tokens. And so they're adding to the pool, as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's perfect. I appreciate that. And do you have any, I guess you guys haven't touched too much on the tokenomics in terms of, do you guys plan to take any of that with the tokenomics and like reinvest your treasury or anything like that? Or have you figured that piece out? Yeah, you guys still working on some of that?
Yeah, the short answer is sure. Yes.
Okay.
And we have a pretty detailed token economics section in the white paper.
Okay.
There's a lot of staking involved, staking of groups and all this kind of stuff. So
perfect. So people can dig into the white paper too to get more specific if they want go deep with that. Pi, did you have any other questions?
Yeah. A lot of people were asking if you guys by any chance would pay them off in stables instead of JennyCo tokens. Is that a possibility in the future or not?
Maybe. I mean, we want to make it as easy as possible that once somebody does receive JennyCo tokens, like Michael was mentioning earlier, how fast and easy can we make it for them to convert it to what they can use, whatever that may be. So, right now we have no plans on the roadmap to be compensating in stable coins. However, we do want to make it really easy to take our token and convert it into whatever is best for that person.
Right.
Perfect. And did you guys say what chain you guys are initially? Did we say that yet?
Yeah, Constellation.
Constellation. Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I'll be on Constellation. And also, I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that our pink sale will be happening on the 22nd. And so anyone interested should definitely go check that out on that launchpad. But also, Obsidian, if you guys would like to give away 5 whitelist spots, we'd be happy to allocate those to you to give out however you feel fit.
Yeah, no, that's great. We do a giveaway, and so for all those that have been asking good questions during our AMA that we've been feeding to you all here, we will enter their names into the whitelist or into the drawing for those whitelist spots. Then, so that's perfect. Thank you.
Oh, of
Excellent.
course. Thank you.
So pink sale on the 22nd, you said?
That's right. Yes.
And then is there a public launch, public sale date set yet?
Our TGE, we're targeting, it will happen before the end of the year.
Okay.
So we're targeting probably late November, early December. We really want to time it ideally with the launch of our app so that those two coincide.
Perfect.
So
Yes.
that's kind of our soft circling of when we think it'll happen.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Great. I don't see. Did you have another question? Sorry, Pi.
I have one question. Yeah.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't think we talked too much about the NFT component of the project. Can we go a bit deeper in that, in terms of that? Just like how the data will be converted into NFTs, and I'm not sure what exactly that entails.
Yeah, so in general, and if we will. No, we're going to have an NFT that we're launching in the next, I think, couple of weeks, a month or so, where you will be able to get a genetic test, and that genetic test information will be NFT. In my mind, is kind of having like your own mini intellectual property stamp on your information, and you can move that information around with that coverage, so to speak, anywhere you want. And so that's kind of our first foray into the whole NFT, marketplace. There's a lot of things we could NFT. We could NFT the group you're in. We could NFT you as a user with your data, getting NFT'd immediately, and then putting the state channel on a contract. So that's kind of the way that we look at what's the most valuable stuff for us, and why or the user.